As a young adult, I found myself working for various criminal organizations, taking part in both domestic and international missions. During one particularly gruesome task, I was assigned to operate within a pool of undocumented migrant workers, living in a dilapidated pigsty. My job was to spread highly toxic pesticides on a potato farm, resulting in the deaths of many workers. The remaining laborers were then forced to bury the corpses by hand. In the mid-1990s, I joined a powerful Chinese-American crime gang. They were known for their ruthless elimination of competitors, and we enjoyed explosive success for a while. However, our reign was cut short when the Federal Bureau of Investigation caught wind of our operations and shut us down. Once again, I found myself on the run. As I faced the possibility of arrest by the authorities, I was approached by Albert Wesker, who offered me a position in a bioweapons corporation known as the Organization. They were looking for top-quality espionage agents to compete with their rival, the powerful international conglomerate known as the Umbrella Corporation. Initially, the organization was skeptical of my loyalties due to my duplicitous nature and refusal to reveal my true identity. However, with Wesker's endorsement, they concluded that I was the perfect fit for the job. Around the same time, I made a connection with Derek Simmons, a member of the secret fraternity known as the Family. He was a high-ranking government official who often abused his position to further his own political agenda. I accepted several freelance missions on his behalf, but our working relationship quickly became complicated as Simmons developed an unhealthy obsession with me. Despite the challenges, I continued to work for the organization, using my skills to gather information and carry out their missions. In 1997, I was given a mission to infiltrate the Arklay laboratory, a facility owned by Umbrella USA that was deeply involved in the development of illegal bioweapons. Using fake credentials, I managed to gain employment at the lab. Soon after, I developed a romantic relationship with Dr. John Clemens, the chief researcher, with the intention of obtaining classified information to help our rival organization. John was committed to our relationship, and even went as far as using John and Ada as his username and password at the lab. Sadly, during the May 1998 T-virus outbreak, John eventually met his demise. I managed to escape undetected, as the facility's U.S. guards were under strict orders to execute anyone attempting to flee. In September 1998, I was tasked by the organization to retrieve a sample of Dr. William Birkin's experimental Golgotha virus, while Umbrella was at their most vulnerable. Along with another agent, I was sent into the city to recover this virus. The mission was headed by Wesker, himself a former Umbrella researcher, who was now in debt to the organization. We were also interested in a freelance investigative journalist named Ben Bertolucci, who had potential information on the virus and the Nest laboratory engineering it. On Tuesday, September 29, I made my way into the police station in search of Bertolucci. The building had fallen to the zombies, with rookie police officer Leon S. Kennedy being the only uninfected survivor left. To protect my mission, I used a cover story. I claimed to be an FBI agent looking for proof of Umbrella USA's illegal bioweapons project. Unfortunately, the information I got from Bertolucci was not enough, and he was soon killed by a mutant. I chose to continue my search for Nest, working alongside Kennedy, who was looking for a way out of the city. By the early hours of Wednesday, I had successfully reached Nest via underground transport into the Arklay Mountains. After a chain of events, I was injured and mistaken for dead. In one account, I was shot by Dr. Birkin while trying to steal a Golgotha sample recovered by Kennedy and fell down a shaft. In another, I was thrown into a console by Tyrant 00. The facility soon began tearing itself apart with the activation of a self-destruct device, and I was forced to escape. On my way, I saved Kennedy from T-00 by throwing an anti-tank launcher. I escaped from the laboratory and made my way back into the city through the sewers. Though I had no time to find another Golgotha sample, I was successful in escaping with a tissue fragment shed From Birkin's remains. By the early hours of Thursday, 1st of October, I had finally made it into the middle of Raccoon City. Per my original orders, I made my way to the Apple Inn to rendezvous with my liaison. When I got to the room, however, I found that the man had already committed suicide out of despair over the situation. Watching from a webcam, Dr. Wesker expressed disappointment about my failure on the mission, likely having access to the nest feed as he knew of Kennedy, and was prepared to let me perish. Ultimately, however, my possession of the tissue fragment saved me, and he warned me that the city was soon to be destroyed in a missile attack, and my only escape was to use a hookshot on an umbrella helicopter. While suspicious of Wesker's motives for saving me, I followed his instructions. I fought my way to the highway overpass, but was slowed down by Tyrant R. When the tyrant was killed, I succeeded in making my escape, with the city being destroyed moments later. During my time at the organization, Wesker and I worked independently for several years. Our paths crossed multiple times, sometimes as allies and sometimes as enemies. One such instance was in Amparo, where the organization was trying to establish a foothold. There, the Sacred Snakes, a criminal syndicate led by drug lord Javier Hidalgo, were buying bioweapons from Colonel Sergei Vladimir. But with Umbrella's downfall, their costs were increasing, and they were looking for a new supplier. I approached them as a liaison for an undisclosed bioweapons developer, but they preferred to buy through Wesker. In August, Hidalgo's assistant Sergio confronted me, and I gave them evidence that proved Umbrella was engaging in shady accounting practices. In exchange, I demanded information from them. I reported this meeting to Wesker, but he warned Hidalgo that I was an Umbrella spy trying to sell him the same products. The Sacred Snakes began searching for me, but I disappeared before they could find me. Nevertheless, the operation was a success for the organization, and we became Hidalgo's primary supplier. In 2004, I received information that Wesker was having secret meetings with Tricell's African branch, and I suspected he was working against our organization. But his seniority threatened my own position within the group. Thanks to me, the organization found out about a bioweapons RD project in Spain by Los Illuminados, using a parasitic organism called Las Plagas. Wesker sent his disciple Jack Krauser to obtain a dominant species, Plaga, but he failed to return with it. Taking advantage of this situation, the organization convinced Wesker to assign me to the mission as well. My objective was to obtain as much information as possible on the Plagas from the ground in a village where the parasite had taken over the populace. However, my mission was delayed when I found out that Kennedy was in the area. He was a spy recruited by the U.S. government, searching for Ashley Graham, the daughter of the president, who had been abducted by Krauser on behalf of Osmond Sadler, to distract the villagers and keep them away from Kennedy. I rang the bell of the nearby church. Shortly after my arrival, Wesker contacted me with information that Sarah had been captured while carrying the dominant species sample, and was being held in a nearby house. I made my way to the derelict part of the village, where I found both Sarah and Kennedy being carried out by a group of villagers, led by the local priest, Fer Torres Mendez. I followed the group to Mendez's house and managed to save Kennedy from being killed, but was captured by the villagers in the process and knocked out by a tranquilizer dart. When I woke up, I found myself laid out on a stone slab, ready to be killed as a ritualistic sacrifice. I managed to shake off my keepers and made my way back towards the village, where I finally found Sarah. Unfortunately, he did not have the sample with him when he was captured and left me empty-handed while he retrieved it from its hiding place. I headed into a nearby castle owned by the Salazar family in pursuit of Sarah, and ran into Kennedy once more. Finally revealing myself to him, he met me with hostile questions about my ties to Wesker, which I couldn't answer. I left him behind to continue my search, shocked to receive orders to execute him as Wesker deemed him a distraction and a possible threat. Unable to bring myself to kill him, I avoided being seen by him and continued my search for Sarah. However, I was too late. Sierra got killed as he returned with the sample. I boarded the speedboat to meet Kennedy. I drove him across a lake to an island where Sadler's bioweapons research was being conducted and where he had taken the sample. Negotiations were made with the organization as to how I would be picked up, and a team began planting explosives around the island to destroy Los Illuminados' research upon the sample's recovery. On my instance, a jet ski was also sent down an underwater outflow as an alternative escape route. After rendezvousing with Krauser at a radio communications tower, where we awaited new orders, I was alone when I was informed by Wesker that Krauser was to kill Kennedy. I moved through the island's industrial district, destroying a small warship being prepared by Los Illuminados as part of their military before reaching a large empty warehouse, where Krauser and Kennedy were enraging in a knife fight. I shot at Krauser, and he left to fight Kennedy elsewhere, at the ruins of a fortress used by the Salazar family long ago. Krauser would lose this second fight in spite of having secretly implanted the dominant species sample he was to recover into his own body. I witnessed the fight from a distance and reported his death to Wesker. Once more, Wesker gave the order to terminate Kennedy, but allowed me the freedom to do so after I retrieved the sample. As I explored the ruined Salazar fortress for myself, I ran into Kennedy once more. He had been implanted with a recessive species plaga when he was captured at the village, but was provided medication by Sierra to slow down the parasite's growth, which he only took when he found himself trying to choke me to death. I insisted we get the parasite out of him immediately, but he refused until Ashley was found and rescued. Leaving him behind, I ran into Krauser, who, alive but wounded, wanted revenge for my betrayal of Wesker. The two of us fought on the modern fortress built by Los Illuminados, where Krauser was finally killed. Continuing my search for the dominant species plaga sample Sadler took from Sierra, I reached a laboratory where Graham was being kept in isolation until her own plaga could take over her body. Distracting Sadler, I was able to give Leon a chance to escape the lab with Ashley. However, my fight with Sadler put me at a disadvantage, due to his mutant body's ability to simply absorb bullets. I was defeated and knocked unconscious. Tied up, I was taken to a tower under construction and hung from a rope around my waist as bait. When Kennedy rescued me, Sadler's parasite grew to massive proportions and began fighting him. Fighting Sadler's militia on the tower, I found a rocket launcher and threw it to Kennedy, which succeeded in killing Sadler once and for all. With the sample now in Kennedy's possession, I made my move and put a gun to his head, forcing him to hand it over. With the sample secured, I jumped off a nearby cliff and into a helicopter waiting to pick me up. To give him a chance to survive, I threw him the keys to my jet ski as a timer for the explosives was set. On the voyage back, I kept the dominant species sample carefully in my possession for the organization, and instead planted a newly recovered sample of a recessive species plaga in a case to be given to Wesker. In 2006, my path crossed with Wesker's for one final time. It happened when a dying Oswell Spencer, who had been in hiding since the Raccoon City incident, ordered his butler Patrick to contact Wesker. Patrick's first step was to reach out to me through a black market dealer named Ricardo Irving. Over the next 3 years, Wesker had built a black market bioweapons empire, using the remnants of Umbrella's research data and Tricell's seemingly unlimited resources. He was using the profits from his endeavors to pursue the Ouroboros project. It ultimately led to his demise at the hands of the BSAA in 2009. At that time, Simmons and the family were seen as the only major threats to my employer. I met with President Belikova and the chiefs of staff under the guise of being a Bioterrorism Security Assessment Alliance representative. In the night, I had a run-in with Kennedy once more, who had been sent into Eastern Slav to verify the reports of bioweapons. Unable to inform him of my mission, all I could do was warn him to avoid returning to the same area as I understood it was to be destroyed in an air bombing. The following day, I met with Belikova once more. where I was accused of being a spy, as the United Nations had no BSA a representative of my name. Belikova's conclusion was that I was a Russian agent, meeting with a contact, refusing to accept the interrogation. Belikova soon made it physical, and I was captured when Belikova's office was turned into a safe room, denying me an escape. Waking up in a large facility beneath the presidential palace, I used a hidden knife to untie myself and investigate. Soon I discovered Belikova's laboratory, confirming the government's role in supplying bioorganic weapons to the rebels. Kennedy and the rebel leader, Alexander Kozachenko, soon made their arrival in the lab as well, following a strike on the palace above, using a manufactured liquor colony. Succeeding in stealing a plaga specimen, I made a quiet getaway while the liquors violently tore through Belikova's soldiers. Following my escape, a joint US-Russian invasion of the country occurred, and the evidence of Belikova's bioterrorism scheme was revealed to the world. However, my run-in with Belikova had problems of its own, and the BSAA was made aware of Ada Wong and her attempt at posing as one of their own. No sooner had an international warrant for my arrest been filed that everything stopped, as if I never existed. Knowing this to be the work of the man who hired me for the mission, I became all the more suspicious that he was refusing to show his identity. Before long, only the CIA and BSA had records of me, and in both cases, the documents were marked as highly classified. In June 2013, I was given a mission to rendezvous with a submarine and uncover important information. The individual who hired me was Simmons, whom I was not interested in involving myself with at first. However, my curiosity got the better of me, and on June 27, I infiltrated the submarine and discovered that my prints were on file. Further investigation led me to uncover a film of myself being ordered on an operation in Edonia in December 2012, which I never participated in. The mission was to capture a man named Jake Muller, who was deemed likely to be a source of C-virus antibodies. Suddenly, the submarine suffered a catastrophic accident and began sinking, but I managed to escape inside a torpedo tube. Simmons contacted me once more, telling me of upcoming attacks in the US, China, and major cities across the globe, all to be blamed on me and Neo Umbrella. 2 nights later, I arrived at Tall Oaks Cathedral, a building known to be the facade for the family's underground headquarters. As foretold, Tall Oaks was suffering from a rapidly accelerating viral outbreak, something even I could not have believed Simmons was capable of doing. As I made my way into their complex, I ran into Kennedy and Secret Service agent Helena Harper, who were trying to talk sense into Harper's mutant sister, Deborah. Seeing it as beyond hope, I instead fired an arrow from my bowgun, but when Deborah survived the attack, the 3 of us worked together to ensure she would die. Once she died, I left the 2 behind, urged by Simmons to head to the laboratory. Watching a VHS tape, I finally found out the truth behind Simmons' unusual behavior. He had successfully used the new C-virus to turn a human test subject into a genetic duplicate of myself. I understood that the Simmons who hired me for the submarine mission was just my doppelganger, so I contacted the real Simmons to warn him of the recent developments and destroyed the laboratory before leaving for China, where the next attack was scheduled. Making my way to Lanxiang, I quickly discovered that my doppelganger was a wanted fugitive on the run from the BSAA, who had evidence that she was responsible for the attack. In my attempt to catch up, I was forced to fight a unique POW, armed with an organic chainsaw dubbed Ubistwo. After escaping it on a train line, the mutant menaced Muller and Sherry Birkin, who were themselves escaping Neo Umbrella agents. I offered my assistance and quickly turned my attention back to my doppelganger, who I spotted driving away in a luxury car, chased by the BSAA. During the car chase to a Red Army Navy aircraft carrier that had been hijacked by Neo Umbrella's soldiers, I found documents that finally explained the origins of my doppelganger. I learned that the doppelganger was created out of Simmons' obsession, sacrificing his own chief researcher, Dr. Carla Radames, with the trauma of such betrayal driving her insane. Suddenly, Radames was shot by a family member from a helicopter and fell onto the deck from upstairs. I rushed to her body to pay respects, but found she was still alive, having infected herself with the enhanced C virus after her fall. Still believing herself to be the real Ada Wong, Radames boasted her doomsday project's impending success. Her mutations caused catastrophic damage to the aircraft carrier, causing it to begin sinking, with me narrowly reaching a helicopter in time. Flying over Lanxiang, I saw the true extent of Radames' doomsday project. While I had been fighting Radames on the ship, a missile on a second aircraft carrier had been prepared to release the C virus into its Tachi district, turning hundreds, perhaps thousands, into zombies within moments of detonation. The BSAA forces in the area were themselves wiped out or infected, and Neo-Umbrella helicopters were free to continue their massacres of civilians. It was a horrifying sight to behold. After saving Kennedy and Harper from zombies, the two having ventured to China to apprehend Simmons, the three of us went our separate ways bound for the Quad Tower. There, we found Simmons, who had mutated from exposure to the enhanced C virus. Believing me to be Radames, he blamed me for his condition and attacked. With Simmons stalled, I beckoned Kennedy and Harper to the roof for pickup. However, as I got out to search the building for Radames' lab, I spotted Simmons climbing the wall, trying to catch Kennedy and Harper. I joined the fight, but I took more than I bargained for and was knocked out, having to be protected by Kennedy, as Simmons knocked Kennedy off the ledge. Gloating, I returned the favor and rescued him, stabbing Simmons in the neck and throwing him off the building into a fire. With no more threats to deal with, I was able to track down Radames' lab, with Kennedy and Harper allowed to go on their way. My investigation uncovered clear signs of another experiment, underway, believed by Radames to be her greatest creation yet. No longer interested in seeing this go further, I instead simply destroyed the chrysalid with submachine gun fire, killing the mutant occupant. I then turned my attention to the other computers in the lab before leaving on another mission.